Well, hello all you drummers out there. This is Joe Drums coming to you. I hope everybody out there is doing great. I'm doing awesome. I just wanted to tell you guys about a new slot that I'm going to be adding to my videos, which is basically like a news and information little bit. And as you can see by the background here, it's going to kind of look kind of newsy, so to kind of give you that feeling of being on the news. But I'm going to be talking about different topics and different things about drumming. We'll add those in occasionally once in a while with maybe some interesting news or some interesting products or something like that. So this is the segment right now I'm going to be doing today, talking about drum heads. We're going to be talking about, there's about 10 different ways. If you have old drum heads hanging around and you don't know what to do with them, I've got 10 tips for you to be able to use these heads in other ways that are pretty interesting. So let's get started with those right now. So number one, there's one called the instant upside down fatness. Basically what happens with that is if you have an old drum head, this obviously is too small for a snare drum, but pretend this is 14 inches. And what you want to do is you take the drum head and you put it upside down on your drum. What happens when you hit the drum head along with the drum head that's already on the snare drum, it instantly turns it into a nice fat thick snare drum sound. It drops the pitch of the drum down considerably, so it gives it kind of a nice fat sound to it. Another way you can do it too is if you literally wanted to cut out the drum head right on the edge of it, you can do that as well and put the whole thing on the pad. And again, that's kind of like what I'm using here. They came out with one of these. It's called the Big Fat Snare Drum, and basically it's got a hole in it, and you just lay it on top of the snare drum and it drops the drum head just considerably to a nice fat thick snare drum sound. So again, if you want to do it yourself, you can do that with your old drum heads. Part two is make O-rings. Again, kind of connected to what we were just talking about. The O-ring is basically cutting out the drum head from here, but then cutting a smaller hole, giving just kind of a loop or a hoop, and you'll put that just on top, and it basically cuts out all of the ring around the drum. Again, they make those, Evans makes them. There's clear ones, as you can see here. This is for the floor tom. It's a 16-inch one. So basically, it just, again, cut the hole out, and you got probably about 2-3 inches of drum head around the drum head that you're putting this on top of. And again, it doesn't drop the pitch of it, but it cuts out the ring. So that's definitely what you want, is to drop the, cut out that ring on the drum head. So part three to this, snare wires, straps. Okay, so basically, if you have a snare drum and it has those plastic little straps that you kind of connect the snare drum to underneath, you can actually cut about 8 to 10 inches, and you'd have to get like a ruler and just cut out 8 to 10 inches and about a ½ inch thick, and you could use that for straps for using it on your snare drum. So that's kind of an interesting way to use a drum head. Number 4, stop snare drum buzz. Again, basically what will happen with that, I've tried this before. Let's say your snares are buzzing a lot and you can't get it if it's too tight or too loose, it's still buzzing either way. You can kind of stop that, again, by cutting about ½ inch and going maybe about 6 to 7 inches or smaller, maybe 5-6 inches. And then you're going to bend it and you put it inside the snare drum. And basically what that does, it cuts the buzz of the snare drum. Now if you move it towards the center, you'll cut a lot more buzz. but if you move it to the side, you'll end up getting a little bit less of a buzz sound. So that really helps a lot. Again, urge you to try that as well. Let's see the next one. The number 5 is called the kick drum patch, and basically you can cut out a circle about maybe 3 or 4 inches around, and basically put that kind of like a patch on your bass drum. So I usually sometimes duct tape it, or you can actually glue it to the head too, and that kind of will make the length of the lifetime of the bass drum head a little longer, because again, where your beater's hitting, it'll hit this plastic and wear that out before it wears your drum head out, giving you more life on your bass drum head. So if you guys are heavy hitters out there and you're going through bass drum heads quite a bit, that's one way to do it without actually going out and spending some money on patches. Okay, so again, you can use your old drum heads for that as well. The next one, emergency drum head. Basically, if you keep your old drum heads around, or maybe keep them in the car or van or truck or whatever you're using to haul your drums to a gig, and let's say you're playing in the middle of the show, you crack right through a snare drum head. If you don't have any extra snare drum heads, you're screwed, and you don't have another way to play a snare drum. So you might have to take a tom head off if you have 14 inches, to put on the top head. But a lot of times I need the toms with the heads the way they are to get the tone, and I just have extra drum heads laying around, some old ones, and I'll put one of those on to get me through the rest of the night. So that's a good way to do it as well. Alright, and the next thing you can do with drum heads, basically if you're stacking drums, let's say you've got quite a few drum sets like I do, and maybe you don't have cases for them, the thing that you'd want to do is basically cut out the drum head, get rid of the frame of it, and then just use the plastic and put that on top of each drum head. So you'll have different sizes for each head, and it'll fit right inside the rim. And then you put the drum on top of that, and that way it'll prevent the main head that's connected with the drum. It won't scratch it or dent it in any way when the drums are being put on top of each other. So as you're stacking the drums, you're going to put a sheet of the plastic from the drum head on each one of the heads of the drum. So you'll start with basically the bass drum. You'll put that down, and you can put usually I put for the bass drum, I'll put like a little small blanket or something like that down, and then I'll set the floor tom on top of that, and then I'll put one of those plastic sheets on top of the floor tom, then put my next tom on top of that, and the next tom, and so on until you kind of stack them up, and you can put them in the corner. That way it saves space in your house when you're stacking drums. And again, the plastic's just there for it so that it protects the drum heads that are already on it. Maybe you have brand new drum heads. If you have cheap, crappy ones and they're used for obviously for years, it doesn't matter to you. If you want to stack the drums without putting them on, you can do that too. But again, this makes it one step easier, to do it that way. All right, the next thing would be the gig pig space reduction. Basically, if you have a small car, and what they're trying to say on this one is, if you have like a small transportation device and you've got a large drum set and you want to be able to put the whole drum set inside there and save space, basically taking off the resonant heads, you can put the shell inside of another shell, a smaller one inside of the bigger one, and go that way until you get them all inside the bass drum. If you take the bass drum head, the front head off, if you're not using any of those. And again, that's a way to save space. Or you can leave the bass drum head on and just stack the toms inside of each other and then put the snare on top or whatever, and that'll basically keep it, protected inside the car, inside the shells, and basically not take up so much space in your car if you have like an old small vehicle or even a newer smaller vehicle. A lot of people have smaller vehicles, they just don't have the room to carry a whole drum set in. I usually put all the stands either in the trunk or on the floor of the car, and then what I'll do is in the back seat, either if you've got a hatchback where you can kind of lower the hatchback down and then just put all the drums in there, the bass drum and then the snare drum on one side, and then put all the toms on that are inside of each other next to the bass drum or whatever, and you still have room to put other stuff. So it's a way to save some space by taking the resonant heads off and leaving them off for the whole gig. Obviously you'd be playing with single heads. There wouldn't be as much tone to the drums, but again, if that's not an issue for you, then it's a good way to, again, save space while you're traveling in a small car with your drum set. So that's that one. Next is to donate the old drum heads. So basically, if you don't want to do anything with your old drum heads and you got a stack of them somewhere, instead of just throwing them out, you can give them to schools or churches, because schools and churches have drums and drum sets and they need extra heads, and maybe they don't have the money to go buy brand new heads, or maybe they broke a head and they need an extra one. So it would be great if you guys had, you know, some extra drum heads to give them. And again, they appreciate it as always, you know, to save some money for the school, for the music program. So that's another way to save some money for them, and for you. You get some peace of mind, and you know that you're not throwing out your old drum head just for nothing, and you're giving it to a good cause that, you know, somebody's going to reuse those drum heads. And last but not least, this is one of my preferences. I've done this before. I've actually had where I've had a drum head and it was broken in the center a little bit, and instead of basically throwing the whole thing out, I cut around it and I made a little square, and I put some pictures, and I taped the pictures on the back and had the picture show through the drum head, so you could hang it on the wall and use this whole drum head as a picture frame. So that's a good way to do it too. So if you have, you know, some old heads and you get some pictures that you want to put up, again, if it's a bit larger head, you can put more pictures inside of the head. Obviously it would be, you know, an interesting talking piece on your wall, and definitely bring up a conversation with it. Again, you could have, you know, regular pictures, but I prefer pictures that, you know, are talking about drums or have drum set, you know, some of my drum sets in them with me playing, or maybe a special gig that you had and you wanted to put those special couple pictures up there inside the drum head and show those off. So it's a good way to use the drum head for a picture frame. All right. So I was looking through the internet and I went to the eBay page, and I was looking at different drum sets, and I found that Steven Adler was the drummer from Guns N' Roses, the original drummer. And he actually was selling 3 drums online on eBay for quite a bit of money, and I was really shocked at the price that he was coming up with. I don't know where he came up with that price, but I don't know if it's him selling them or somebody else that had his drum set that's trying to make some money off of it, obviously, if they are. But the drum set, he had a tom, a bass, and a floor tom. And he was selling those 3. It's not even a full kit, no cymbals, no stands, no nothing, just 3 drums. And it was for $127,000. Now, in retrospective, I'm thinking, wait a minute, because when Neil Peart came out with the DW 30th anniversary setup, and you know the one I'm talking about, the black drum set with the gold, everything was gold plated on it, that ran $30,000, and that had quite a few drums with the stands, with all the toms and everything on it, and 24 karat gold plated hardware for $30,000. And here we are, Steven Adler. You know, again, don't get me wrong, he's a great drummer. I respect him highly, but he's definitely not one of the most higher up, well-known drummers as Neil Peart is. But for him to come up with $127,000, or whoever sold that, if you guys know more about the story of it, I'd like to know. But for $127,000 for 3 drums, it's just, that's... anyway, so let me know what you guys think about that. Leave your comments down below. And again, if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free about anything else I've done. So please like and subscribe to my videos, JOEDRUMS2112. If you like this video, please like it. And again, if you guys have any other questions or comments, feel free to drop me a line. And I'll talk to you guys on the next video. Until then, you guys take care. Keep rocking. This is Joe Drums signing off. Have a good one.